it's Paul CHEK today, and I wanted to take a minute to address a question that I commonly get from people all over the world. And that question is, Paul, why are there so many problems with politicians, bankers, the church, the school system, you name it? It seems like the whole world's falling apart all the time. It's a good question. Are politicians different than other people? Are they different than lawyers? Are they different than bankers, etc.? Well, no. We all have one thing in common. We're human beings. Hallelujah. And boy, to be a human being is a handful. You are right in the middle of the world of mind. We'll call that above. And the world of matter, we'll call that below. And in between is this dynamic marriage of mind and matter producing this thing we call life. So today I wanted to share my view on why we have problems in so many major areas of the world and why we see movie stars and famous people regularly having problems, whether it be the greatest athletes in the world or the greatest dancers in the world, etc. We're all in this together. So what I'd like to share is the 7 psychophysical themes of development. In Eastern metaphysics, using the 7 chakra or energy center system, we can look at the philosophy that was founded thousands of years ago, and there's other philosophies that share different structures but basically get you to the same place. For example, Taoism has 3 centers. Egyptian philosophy has anywhere between 9, 12, and even 21 centers of psychophysical development, or levels of consciousness, if you will. To make my point, though, I just want to highlight that all human beings, no matter what their size, race, shape, color, or profession, are going through these same levels of development. And it just so happens if people keep pointing cameras at you, then we get to see where that person's doing their own, shall we say, research and development into human growth and development, which we're all doing, but some of us are getting more awareness than others. First of all human beings in the first 7 years of their life must learn how to create safety and security. That means, for a child, it means knowing what fire is, knowing what sharp means, knowing what hot is, what cold is, knowing how to survive in your immediate environment. From our family and our tribe or our culture, we learn what it means to feel safe not only in our home environment but in our social environment. These are the programs that we have at the root of all of our decision making. These are the first things you learn. So am I safe or am I not safe becomes a determining factor as to how you go about creating the rest of your decisions, and that plays out in your relationship. So first, am I safe, and what does security mean to me? Do I need $100,000 in the bank at all times to feel safe and secure, or am I comfortable with 1,000 or even 100? Those are all value judgments that we all make based on our prior conditioning. My wife, for example, feels fine with $5 in her pocket. She'll travel across the world with hardly anything in her pocket. I don't like having less than about $300 cash on me. That's just the way I am. But these are just examples of different viewpoints and ways of relating with this issue of safety and security. Money is just one way of looking at it. But if a person's money-oriented, then when they get a certain level of financial debt or get down to a certain point, they have much stronger stress reactions than somebody else. Someone might have to go all the way down to almost bankrupt to have the same kind of reaction another person might have if they've got less than $1 million in the bank. Once we learn what it means to create safety and security, the next 7 years of our life, and each of these come in 7-year blocks. That doesn't mean you'll follow that rule, but that's how the energy naturally flows. Once we've learned safety and security, we're also learning what does it mean with regard to our sexuality in our family or our tribe or our culture. What does it mean to be a male or a female? What's expected of you? And if you read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, you'll see there's a lot of problems today with women fitting into our culture and how we're having an idea clash. We're trying to use old ideas that don't work to heal the population and to heal the planet. So we're going through a transition phase, but this has a lot to do with what does it mean to be a woman. There's probably many women in a patriarchal society like this that feel very frustrated that women are not being treated fairly, and that can cause sex stress in an individual, to be frustrated because you're a woman and you don't feel like you're getting treated fairly. So there's just an example of some of the depth of sexuality, learning what it means to be a man or a woman in your family, tribe, or culture. Are you happy with your sex identity? If you're not, you're going to have stress at this level of your being. Very importantly here is your rhythm and flow. When a child's between 1 and 7, they're just basically playing. The rhythm and flow they learn about is when they're hungry, learning to poop when they need to poop, and mom and dad teach you to go to bed. But once you start getting past 7 years of age, now school begins, more responsibilities would have been given to you in a tribe because you probably would have wanted them just because it's fun to work with animals and do things. So now, by the time you're 14, you should have quite a well-defined sense of the rhythm and flow of how a day unfolds for most human beings, how the work world works, the school world works, and how all these worlds interpenetrate through scheduling. Buses come at certain times, planes come at certain times, classes run at certain times, meals are typically served at certain times. A person who's out of balance with regard to rhythm and flow often has problems like skipping meals and showing up late all the time and wondering why they can't hold a job, or trying to fit more things into a day than they can possibly do and perpetually stressing themselves out, all of which lead to health problems. Each of these centers of psychological growth and development are connected to different regions of the body and manifest stress in those areas quite typically. So for example, this center here is connected to your kidneys and your adrenal glands and your low back. This is connected to your sex organs and your legs and your bones and your low back as well. So people with any of these problems often have physical manifestations of problems due to the blockage of the flow of energy or the overexcitation of the glands and psychic centers that connect to the physical body parts. Once you know what equates to safety and security and what your sex identity is, your sexuality is, and how you can contribute to society through having a healthy rhythm and flow and working with everybody else, then the next 7 years of your life from 14 to 21 relate to your personal power, where you try your very best to identify, either through support of your friends, family, education, etc., or your own exploration, what do I want to do in the world? There can be many trial and error issues here. This can go on for many years, but in a tribal culture, most of us were already well indoctrinated into our function in the tribe by the age of 21, which is when the ego actually fully forms, according to many different researchers. So what is our personal use of our power, and how does it contribute to the bigger picture and make us feel like we're giving back and we're a valuable part of the team, or we are somebody, right? There can be all sorts of problems at this level. Some people learn to be overly aggressive. Some people learn to be too submissive and not stand up for themselves. So you have excessive self-esteem, poor self-esteem, all sorts of interesting things. But right here is where you're supposed to really say, this is who I am, and go out and chase it and live your dream. Next, from 21 to 28, we all go through lessons in learning how to give and receive love. Many of us are good at giving love, but not good at receiving it. Some of us are overly good at receiving it and terrible at giving it. Now, before I move on, I want to say we're actually learning all of these things at all times. At no point are you learning not to give and receive love. If you're learning safety and security, you're learning how to love and care for yourself. If you're injured or dead, that's not very loving. It's just that at these periods of our life, these become dominant themes in general. So from 21 to 28, we have to learn to give and receive love, and we all know there's a lot involved in that little topic right there. How many times have you seen movie stars and actresses on television in some kind of trouble over issues of giving and receiving love? It's as common as white bread. Next, we move up into the 5th level. So here we're going to go from 28 to 35, and we're really supposed to be working on mastering our creative self-expression. The 5th chakra, or energy center, relates to the voice, expressing yourself, your arms and hands, to communicate and to create. Most people think this is just communication, but communication is a very important form of creation. So here we're taxed to learn how do we better refine our creation ability and our communication ability so that we can more effectively contribute to the tribe and nourish our own personal needs for growth and self-sufficiency. Then we go up into the 6th realm. Now typically once you reach this level, you've done your training in life. Now you're going to turn around and work backwards. So first you're taxed to learn these things. Once you reach this level, from 35 to 42, now you're taxed as a teacher or an example in some way. So we all become examples on the way back. Including in this process, we also must learn how to use our imagination. Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. So imagination is a way we can learn to use existing ideas in unique combinations to come up with novel solutions or ways of expressing ourselves, which is very, very important. Because if a person does not learn to use their imagination, they risk becoming programmed to the degree that their life loses any sense of joy, surprise, novelty, and it can become a source of depression in a lot of people. It happens to a lot of academics, people who are also in religious circles where everything's restricted, controlled, and it's the same every day. It can make life deadly boring. So imagination is really a tool for amazing release from the box of the ego self. Intuition is also essential because intuition goes beyond our own ideas and it uses the universal mind. Here we also must come face to face with our myth. What do we believe happens when we lose our body or we die a physical death? What is the bigger story that we're a part of? If we don't develop our myth, and if we don't develop a myth that we enjoy, then the concept of death can become so scary that people can never actually fully live. So what do we see here? We see a couple of key things. All human beings, whether they're politicians, lawyers, doctors, butchers, race car drivers, prostitutes, we are all going through these levels of development, and no matter what group of people you point your camera at, you're going to see people going through the necessary trial and error of mastering becoming human, which means to become empathetic and compassionate as a human being, because you actually get far enough along the line that one day you turn back and you realize everyone's standing around you. You can recognize yourself in them. There's me when I was in my 20s and in a hurry all the time. There's me when I was unaware of the value of money and just spent it like crazy and caused financial trouble. There's me when I was telling lies to try to get promoted, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden you realize how amazing it is and that the world is a great big kindergarten for souls, and we're all learning how to love each other and love the creation itself. So in PPS Success, my PPS Success Mastery program, I teach a concept of I, we, all, which is very similar to Ken Wilber's structure in some ways. First, we must master these 7 levels for reasons of our own self-nourishment, our own self-love, and our own self-respect. Once we legitimately nourish and love ourselves, we literally do then have something to share in a we relationship. So mastering yourself through these levels of development guarantees that you become, more juicy in relationships with other people. We have more to bring to the table. And once we've learned the challenges of we relationships and conditional loving, I love you if, I love you when, I love you and, I love you but. Conditional relationships is also contracts, rental agreements, legal agreements about anything. So once we learn about the importance of being honest in we relationships, we naturally grow to seeing ourselves in the world and in the humanity of all. And then we realize it's all perfect. It's exactly what it's designed to be. You can gamble it away, you can rape, you can steal, you can love, you can hug, you can be ethical, unethical, moral, immoral, confused moral, overly moral, whatever you want to be. That's what we do here in Playground Earth. So now that we have Paul CHEK's view on why all the screwed up politicians and government and all these other things that seem to be forever going on, we can all embrace them as human beings. We can know that the Catholic Church has the same problems we have in almost every other religion and every other household. They just get a lot more publicity. That's who we are. And learning to enjoy and embrace and stay focused on your own process, and remember that there's an important truth to be had. The truth is that the means and the ends reflect and reinforce each other. It means if you go about gaining money or financial support by abusing other people, that's your means. The end will reflect it. Somewhere along the line you're going to attract abuse to yourself. Whatever the means are, it reinforces the ends. So I'll close by saying I have learned in my own life experiences, and still continue to learn, that love is a boomerang. Just ask yourself, do I want to catch this when it comes back? If you're going to be an asshole when you toss it, it comes back with a lot of asshole on it. If you're going to be cheap and cheesy with relationships, then cheap and cheesy comes back. If you're going to be loving, friendly, and generous, loving, friendly, and generous is most likely to come back. Thus the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Probably the only thing we need in all religious texts. If we focus on that, we'll do a lot better. One of the questions I try to ask myself before I make any kind of decision where I might get somebody hurt or anything is, if the whole world was to do this right now, would the world be a better place? And if I can answer that honestly, yes, I feel good about the decisions I'm making. And so if the whole world was to eat my organic popcorn, I'm sure the world would be a better place, because it's a lot better than what they're eating now. So thanks for joining me today. Let's give the politicians and the bankers and the clergy a big hug, and know that we're doing our best to love each other the best we can, and with a little bit of awareness and a little participation, we can make this place a lot cooler than it is right now. Aho, Great Spirit. See you next time.